Unit 5, Lesson 6, World War II ends. Unit 5, Lesson 6, Vocabulary. The war comes to an end. Victory in Europe. At the Yalta Conference in February of 1945, leaders Joseph Stalin, Winston Churchill, and President Roosevelt met to discuss the end of the war. They agreed to divide, occupy, and denazify Germany. Critics of the Yalta Conference said that this gave too much power to Russia, as they were basically allowed to control Eastern Europe, while the United States tended to the affairs in the South Pacific, and Britain saw to the affairs of North Africa and Western Europe. President Roosevelt died April 12, 1945, from a cerebral hemorrhage. His vice president, Harry Truman, who was only vice president for 82 days, succeeded President Roosevelt, who served for over 12 years, winning 4 elections. Before President Roosevelt's death, he had allowed the United States military to initiate a joint Allied project consisting of Canadian, British, and United States scientists to build an atomic bomb. This was started in 1940 and led by scientist J. Robert Oppenheimer. By July 1945, 3 atomic bombs had been built. One bomb is the equivalent of 20,000 tons of TNT. During the atomic age, the Manhattan Project, headed by J. Robert Oppenheimer, developed weapons, and the 2 bombs were known as Little Boy on the left and Fat Man on the right. Air Force General Paul Tibbets Jr. was the aircraft captain who flew the B-29 Superfortress, known as the Enola Gray, which dropped the first of 2 atomic bombs used in warfare, Little Boy, on the Japanese city of Hiroshima. The attack at Hiroshima, August 6, 1945. 70,000 Japanese citizens were killed immediately. 48,000 buildings were destroyed. Over 100,000 died of radiation poisoning and cancer later on. Excerpts from a speech given by President Harry Truman to the American public and to the world as he proclaims, "My fellow Americans, the British, Chinese, and United States governments have given the Japanese people adequate warning of what is in store for them. The world will note that the first atomic bomb was dropped on Hiroshima, a military base. If Japan does not surrender, bombs will have to be dropped on her war industries, and unfortunately, thousands of civilian lives will be lost. I urge Japanese civilians to leave industrial cities immediately and save themselves." The second atomic bomb, dropped 3 days later, August 9, 1941, killed 40,000 citizens immediately. Over 60,000 were injured, and 100 plus thousand died of radiation poisoning and cancer later on. After the Nagasaki bombing, Emperor of Japan, Hirohito, surrendered to the Allies to end World War II in the South Pacific. "The time has come to bear the unbearable," he is quoted as saying for his surrender to the Allied forces. Japan officially surrenders on August 14, 1945. The official surrender ceremonies were held on the USS Missouri near Tokyo Bay on September 2, 1945. The results of the war. World War II brought about major changes in warfare tactics. For the total war, civilians of countries participated in any way possible throughout America, Europe, and the Soviet Union. On a global scale, 60 nations were involved in the conflict on 3 continents. There were major advancements in technology: radar, guided missiles, jets, atom bombs, of course, and many new medicines were pioneered during World War II. Airplanes themselves saw a huge, dramatic leap in technology, and air combat became essential to warfare and helped the Allies with our superiority from Britain and America. The economic costs of the war were tremendous. Wars cost billions of dollars, and they typically ruin economies, especially for the losing side. The social costs, on the other hand, were far more hard to live with, as over 22 million died, and over 34 million were wounded. Millions of refugees left their home countries fleeing the violence throughout Europe, Africa, and the Soviet Union, not to mention China and the South Pacific. And we've already spoken at length about the mass genocide and Hitler's racial policies, including the extermination of over 6 million Jews in concentration camps throughout Europe. Politically, the costs were as high as the economic or social costs of the war. Colonialism in Africa and Asia declined as France and Britain lost power. The Soviet Union acquired satellite states in Eastern Europe that would become communist footholds for the Soviet Union. The United Nations was founded to keep world peace and maintain world peace throughout all countries. Germany, which was defeated now in 2 consecutive world wars, was divided into Communist East under Soviet control and Democratic West, overseen by Britain and America. The end result of these political costs: 1. The United States and the Soviet Union emerged as superpowers. 2. The beginning of the atomic age. The first and only time that atomic weapons have been used in war was the United States dropping the bombs on August 6th at Hiroshima and August 9th at Nagasaki. Sort of a weird benefit for the United States after World War II was, as the world economy was falling throughout Europe, the Soviet Union, Africa, and even most of Asia, the United States economy grew tremendously during and even after World War II. The government worked more directly to regulate the economy than ever before and marked the official end of the Great Depression. The post-war economy continues to depend heavily on military spending and defense contracts in the years after World War II ends, where, despite higher taxes, national debt rises to new levels as well. Some peg the estimates that the war cost the United States approximately $10 million per hour to be involved in.